So I'm going to call the meeting to order because we have a lot to cover tonight. Up first, we have our consent agenda. That includes our prior minutes from February 4th. We have no policy readings tonight. Any discussion from the board about the February 4th minutes? So I'll make a motion then to accept the minutes, and we don't actually have to do that by roll because miraculously we're all
I have no
in
board
the
members
room
on.
tonight because Lisa's not on virtually.
Nope.
So motion to accept the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you so much. So, Lynn, talk about the flow of the meeting and prioritizing.
So we have a few things that are out of the ordinary. We have someone coming to talk with us about PCBs, Rob Montgomery. He is on with another school district right now.
Correct.
So we're expecting that we'll be on with him at 7. And then I'm expecting 2 executive sessions for this
Okay.
evening. So we'll need to go in for 2 executive sessions on personnel.
Okay, and we'll do the executive sessions at the end after we dismiss everyone who isn't going to be part of those discussions. So Vern, the name of the gentleman who's coming to
Rob
talk-
Montgomery
Rob Montgomery,
from Fuss and O'Neill.
right, and so he's coming on at 7.
That's correct, yeah.
Does he have a little bit of flexibility if we're in the middle
Yeah.
of someone's report
Yeah,
at
because
7?
he may be a whisker late too because he's actually in another.
Okay,
room,
so Courtney will just keep an eye on his presence in the
Yep.
waiting room then? Okay, great. And Courtney, people who are virtual, are they interested in speaking as well?
They did not respond to me, so I think no.
Okay, well, if it changes, let me know.
Okay.
So that brings us to our public comment window. So generally, Terry, we ask people to kind of keep comments to around 3 minutes or so, but that is a little more if ever, you have a little more time than that since you're the only person speaking.
Okay, so I'm here in support of the vice principal at the Sheldon Elementary. I have grandchildren that attend, and I can't even believe that we would think of getting rid of this person, because it's amazing from when my grandchildren first started going to Sheldon to when he became vice principal. When you walk into the building, the atmosphere is very different. The hallways are very quiet, and when they're not, I've seen him a couple times step out, and it goes right down to a doll. I think there's a lot of respect for him with the children. I think his standards are very high, which is great. The time that he spends in that building is unbelievable to me. Because he does have a family, he has children of his own, and yet he's the first one you see when you go in. I don't care what function I go to, he's the last one coming out the door when you leave. And I just think it's bad enough that they're starting with a new principal, but then to take away the vice principal, I don't agree with it. And second, a male at that. I think so many of these children need that male role model right now in the way society is. In my regular job, I see a lot of homes on their doorstep, and a lot of these children do not have what a lot of kids do. And I hope that you can find a way to keep him in that position. And if it means all of us here have to do something to make that happen, that's what we're here for. So I guess that's my spiel.
Okay. Thank you so much, Terry. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thank you. Last call for anyone else who'd like to speak. Okay, thank you so much.
No, we don't know.
Okay.
Someone over here.
And what's your name, please?
Amy Jenkins.
Were you already on the list, Amy?
I'm not checked off.
Oh,
I'm on the list,
okay.
but I'm not checked
All right.
off. So I had sent a letter to the board a couple of days ago as well about this, but I feel the same about the assistant principal. You know, the years of experience that he brings, he's a coach, his administrator role, his teaching roles previously. I really think the board needs to consider keeping him in this role. Sheldon, as we all know, has had so much change the past few years, especially in the principal role, the staff role. You know, as she mentioned, there's going to be a new principal, so some level of normalcy for the students and the staff, I think, is important. So I just, you know, I hope everyone, I realize there may not have been a deadline met, but how many of us in our jobs or personal lives don't meet a deadline for various reasons? So I just hope everyone can consider what is best for the students and staff of Sheldon and keeping him in this role. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, so moving on, we'll do our school spotlight. Kevin?
Well, that's really not one I want to follow. I wish, yeah. Court, can you just throw it up on there?
Yep.
Let's go.
This will be quick. Quicker than when I first, you guys don't know, but when I did this a year ago, it was about 45 minutes long. And it was 35 minutes longer than it was supposed to be, and this will be about 40 minutes less than that. So this is a look at the data from when I first started until we are as of the winter. So, all right, so we're going to talk first about reading. So reading, when I first started, we were looking at around 50%, 38% and 62% is where we started, okay? So 38% of our students were proficient, 62 were below proficiency. We have, in that meantime, we put together phenomenal win blocks, what I need blocks. In terms of intervention, there's 2 a day. We've also changed our reading program, Amplify, in my view, for the littlest kids and the older kids. So since then, so our winter scores now look around 50-50. There's been some improvement, not a ton, but there's been significant improvement, I guess, if you look at it in terms of percentages. If we look at it, go back, Court. If we look at it in terms of our nearlies, these are rows of 15, so 15 plus handfuls, so say 20, 23 or so. We're nearly, and then Court, now we're down to less than that, right? Right? It's great. What I have noticed, and what maybe some of the teachers here have noticed, is I haven't seen a huge buy-in by the kids around the MyView and the Amplify, but it's coming with time. Right? We're just starting out, so it's something different. And with anything that's different and there's change, you're going to feel that kind of rub, particularly with our middle schoolers and Amplify more than anything. Now, I see a nod of the head, so I'm going to assume it's across our district. Okay, Court. And then we'll talk quickly about math. So math, when I first got there, it was 28% of our students were proficient in mathematics, and that was concerning, right?
To say the least.
Right, it was really concerning. And I've said this before, Sheldon hasn't heard this, so I'll just say it here, but when I first started, our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, so this was a year ago, those are now 9th graders, right? There were 2 kids that are proficient in mathematics. And I remember walking in and reading that number, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was shocked. And I don't think it meant necessarily that there were only 2 kids that were proficient, but there wasn't a culture of wanting to learn. And so when there's not a culture of wanting to learn and to show off what you can do, then you're going to get 2 kids showing it. And so, Court, hit it. So, no, that's not right. Because hit it one more time. Hit it. Maybe it is. I know it's not. But okay.
Kevin, if you go to the next slide, I wonder if you just
I might have.
copied it,
So
get your data at the bottom.
I might have. So what we are now is we're at 76% of our students are proficient. Okay, so we jumped up significantly. Let's just talk quickly about the middle school, because that's where, man, it was like the hardest thing to get those kids to want to do well and to show that they could do well. So some of the things that I appreciate, and it sounds odd, maybe I'm talking mostly to Sheldon teachers, but it sounds really odd, is that one of the bullying things that we heard was, you didn't do so well on your SCAR score, which is kind of a cool thing to hear, not that they're saying that, but that it's like they're taking it like seriously, like I want to do really well in this. So where does that come from? It comes from a culture of wanting to do well. And what I've noticed is we have a saying about doing your job at the middle school, so everybody has a job. I have a job, our kids have jobs, our teachers have jobs, is that the kids are trying to do their job. And their job is to not be disruptive in class. Their job is just to be there and to sit there and to soak up what the teacher's trying to teach them. And it's really worked, and it's really been amazing to be a part of. The other thing that I think our math scores, so now I told you there was 2, there's 3 left that are proficient. So they went from only having 2 proficient to now only 3 left to be proficient. So it's pretty cool. Why? Because I don't think the kids are necessarily, they're learning more, but they're wanting to show what they can do. So there's a culture of wanting to do well. And I also think, and this is my plug for VMI, for Vermont Mathematics Institute, or initiative, is we have a couple of teachers in our middle school that are now in it, and they're in it deep, and it makes a huge difference, a monster difference. And so, Lynn, I think, is now on the board. I think she got pushed onto it, so it worked out really well. My push is for more teachers to do it, and to take a part of that, because it's the what you learn and how to teach math is so incredibly important. Where I was at, which was a previous district, kids would walk into 7th grade and they would be somewhere around 30% mathematics and proficiency, and they left at 80%. And it was because there's a culture of wanting to learn, right? That's always number one. But the teachers also knew how to teach math, and they were specialized in that. It was just amazing. So I think, Court,
That's it.
I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Kevin, can you just say again, what's the measure?
this is all, so the one previously was the STAR, and it's based off of the STAR testing with the state,
Okay.
right? And then, oh, so there was something different. I thought there was.
This was the,
It just magically appeared. It must have taken some time to come over from Bakersfield. So, yeah, so it was 50-50, right? Where we're 50%, 50%. Now it's 28, and now it's 72. So 72 on the STAR. The district benchmark, as you guys know, is a little bit different than the state benchmark, right? Does that make?
Well, that's your old data.
Yeah.
That's, okay, and then up to 50-50. I don't think it's right. If you,
It's not. I think I
Still
flipped
not
them.
right,
I think I put the wrong dates on.
because you were 76.
Yeah, I flipped it. Anyways, my apologies for that. But the point being, regardless of what this is that the kids are learning, the kids are doing well, the culture has shifted, kids want to do well. Behavior data, I can give you that real quick. I only work with 2 kids a day. The rest of the kids are all doing their job. And it's really cool. Teachers are doing their job, kids are doing their job. And like I said, I have 2 kids. Our planning room is never being used right now. So our planning room teacher is able to get in the classrooms. And it's just really because I think the kids want to do well and they want to showcase that. It's okay to be learning and take some time. And I can't praise my teachers enough. We had a teacher who unexpectedly resigned at break. And my teachers met and we couldn't find somebody. As you can imagine, finding somebody at this time of the year is really hard. And I had my middle school teachers and my interventionists and my special educator, their incredible flexibleness just created this menage of success. And it's just working for those kids until we can find somebody. Not once did I hear a grumble. Not once did somebody say, I don't want to do it because it's not what I want to do. Not once. And it's really, they are just taking that, wanting to do whatever they can for those kids and stay in there. It's been a blast. It's been a blast. So that's my spotlight. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
it's really evident when I visit Bakersfield that the shift in the culture that Kevin's describing. Had the privilege of sitting in on some staff small group work, and they're really invested in digging in and trying to figure out what every single student needs to move over that line. And I think that Kevin gives you the Bakersfield Bobcat in the visual, but he uses real photos with his staff. And when he uses the real photos and they move over the line to proficient, it's a really, really effective way, effective visualization. So thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
because there isn't, just like you guys, there isn't a parent that wants their own child behind that line. There isn't a parent. There's not a grandparent that wants their grandchild below that line. And so we, because you guys are educators like I have been for decades, is not quite as long as Vern, but you will do whatever it takes because you love those kids so much. And it's evident in what you guys do, I'm sure, without stepping foot in your building, and I'm just sure of it because you're all here tonight, and the same with my staff. They'll do whatever it takes, so, yep.
Thanks so much, Kevin. All right, Morgan.
A lot of my stuff is informational, and you have on my report the tip that Rob Montgomery and Hudson O'Neill will be coming on to join us. First off, congratulations on the budget passing. Passed with 73% yes, which is only a few percentage points below Kevin's math scores.
There's a correlation between math and
Looking at the data over the last 5 elections, the yes votes are pretty consistent and the no votes swing. So it seems to be really budgets passing based on who's showing up to vote. There were 2 write-in, 2 board seats with no candidate listed. Arlene cruised unopposed to re-election for Bakersfield. In Berkshire, I did just get the official results. Sarah Como had enough write-in votes to take that seat, and in Sheldon, Rebecca Jacobs had enough write-ins to take that seat. So all 3 of those will get full 3-year terms, and we'll get Sarah and Rebecca deputized for your next board meeting. The water system update in Berkshire is just informational, as is the boiler project in Sheldon on my report. Just informational. We can come back to the PCB discussion when Rob Montgomery's able to join us. And then just a heads up for next month, I should be able to give you a pretty solid idea of where we're going to end the year with tuition payments. I'll work on the Enosburg-Richford bills this week, and we'll probably see the other big districts dropping sometime between now and your next meeting. So unless there are any questions, I'll just put a kind of a pause on mine, and then we can hop back to Rob when he jumps on.
Okay, and you don't want to go further into the water system, that was just an informational.
Could you give some info? I feel like let's talk about that.
Okay, so the Berkshire owns its own water system, and so that's run by the Department of Environmental Conservation, not the AOE. There was some testing, and there are PFAS amounts that were found there. It's below any current action level, but there are going to be action levels coming online in the future that I think it's one of the 5 compounds would trigger action. And so the state is doing work with all the water systems that are in this boat. And they proposed first going forward with hiring a contractor to look at the system and propose several different mitigation strategies. Du Bois and King is the contractor that we are working with. The upgrade to that system would be fully funded. It's fully funded by a federal grant, and we know how things are with the federal government right now, so we're keeping an eye on that. But we are moving forward as if that would be funded. The district will have to pay for any maintenance costs. So I'm very quickly getting over my skis, but there would basically be a water treatment plant. There would be some stuff in there that pulls the PFAS out, and then that has to be disposed of and replaced on an annual basis. So that disposal and restocking would be on the district, but the construction of the plant would not be.
And what's the source of the PFAS?
I don't think they know.
We
It's
don't.
groundwater.
Yeah, it's groundwater. Again, it's not,
So it's not coming from kind of human-made components of the water system?
I don't
They
think
So
so.
is it
don't
is
think
it
it's
naturally
coming from the
occurring
water system.
in
Well, that's,
some-
that's the only school that we have on our own water system. Everything else is municipal.
Right.
So, and again, the levels weren't, sky high, but like I said, the state is recognizing that we're gonna start being more stringent, so it's kind of a no-brainer. We should go ahead and do it,
But
especially.
it has
if
to
it's
be,
over.
the contamination has to be coming from something that
Yeah.
isn't, well, you don't know whether it's part of the system itself or
Yeah,
broader ecological contamination
Right.
that's infiltrated the water source.
right.
So
And
they
how-
only know that we have PFAS because of was it done through quarterly testing?
Yes.
And how come we, I believe you've said this before, but refresh my memory, why we can't just link in with the town of Berkshire water
They
supply?
want nothing to do with this.
All the
So-
other schools are
Let-
connected to town water, correct?
Let me give you some historical context,
It's a well, they have their own well.
but they didn't.
They didn't,
For a very long time.
They
when
fed
I
off
was
us.
the principal in Berkshire, the Berkshire school water system supplied water to the town garage and the town clerk's office for probably decades. And I wanna say it was around the same time that they built the town garage, was it around that
Yep.
time? That they drilled their own water system, so we did explore that option of, hey, we supplied you with water for a long time, do you think that you could do it for us? And that wasn't favorable for them, so.
So this is some sort of point of sort, like water filtration system, and then the maintenance cost or whatever the material,
Right.
some sort of carbon-based,
Yeah.
something that's gonna pull out the PFAS,
Yeah.
and then we have to dispose of that safely,
Yes,
however.
we'll have more information, I'm sure, at the next meeting.
Okay.
Du Bois and King they've come up and sampled, and they're moving forward with the project.
Okay.
But we haven't got a ton of information from them at this point.
Okay, okay, I
Do
appreciate
you
that.
want me to put in the notes a timeline? Well, when do you think you're going to hear from?
I would suspect, I sent the note out to them to see where we are at, and they're moving forward as far as engineering.
So monthly updates
Yeah.
through Morgan?
Yeah, I've got it on there every month. Based on our experience with DEC, with the PCB work, it's not a fast-moving train.
I'm just curious what sort of maintenance system we're looking at, if it's just like changing a cartridge out once a month, or is it actually like more involved than that? Is it UV treatment? How do you extract PFAS from the water? Like, do we?
It's, from what I looked at it quickly, from what they talked about, it's gonna be a series of UV filtration, so.
Which is
Yeah.
really quite expensive, my understanding.
I mean, we can have.
I can have that
somebody
information for you.
come to describe what it's going to be, but I think that the big idea here is that we're going to be forced to do something to address the PFAS. So if we wait, we'll have to pay for the treatment part of it. Right now, we have the opportunity, I think it's over $1 million that they will
It's
pay for
900,
that
yeah.
part. So we'll be on the hook for the construction and for the monitoring. Right now, the state will pay for the construction, we're gonna be on the hook for the monitoring either way. But I think that you're all asking really good questions, and I think it makes sense to have them come and do something to give greater detail to the board.
Is that something you can share with the town, the monitoring? Like the town, like probably have to go to schooling to be able to monitor that. Is that something that you could share with one of the town?
You mean in
That
terms
keeps
of like
track
the
of their
water
water
system?
system?
We have a water system operator, but is that what you're asking if like town and school share? the water system, I don't know. I used to know when I was the official owner of that water system for 11 years. But,
Yes, as most of us are contracting with the same outfit.
yeah,
Does this mean the water's not drinkable there,
no,
or it is?
it doesn't
It's
mean
drinkable.
that. Yeah.
It is.
Oh, I didn't answer that appropriately. I meant, no, it doesn't mean that, but I can see how that would be differently.
So Morgan, we are 4 minutes from 7. Any sign of Rob Montgomery in the waiting room yet?
No.
So,
I think if you want to go ahead and move on to the
Can
next
we-
item and.
I have something else I wanna go to, we're gonna talk about PCBs, but let's talk about the modular classroom. Rob doesn't really have anything to do with that, but how about, between you and Vern, can you give an update? The board is aware that we had to move kids out of the mod.
Yeah. So obviously, the ground moved a fair amount this year because the frost is pretty low. So we had some egress issues where the doors, we had to build a ramp and then 2 egress doors for each classroom. And the modular heaved and the doors were not able to open. So I made the decision that we're not gonna put kids out there. It's just not a safe situation. So once we get the ground unthawed, we'll get it put back to where it needs to be and get them back in there. But it's one of those things that Mother Nature's nothing I can do about it.
and are there steps that we can take with kind of site work
Yes.
over the course of the summer that we wouldn't have a frost-related
Right.
issue
Yep.
next season?
Yep.
Okay, sweet.
Part of this, when that occurred, it became clear that the community really isn't understanding why it's taking so long with PCBs. So this is one of the reasons why we asked Rob Montgomery to come tonight, because it's been a while since we've talked about the PCB situation in Berkshire, and I think it's easy to lose track of, but the timeline is frustrating for all of us, and I think Rob will help
Yeah.
us understand why. I'm wondering, Aaron, if you could give us just an update on, there were kids in the mod classroom and now they're not in the mod classroom, so what did you all do with those kids?
Okay. We have 4 middle school classrooms right now, 3 grade levels, and so the math teacher, Ginger Morris's blessing says she's put math on a cart. So she's moving into each of the classrooms and the teacher has a prep. There's now a class in there and she's teaching math. The second classroom that was in there we just used for extra wind classes, sometimes music was in there, and they've just moved into the classrooms that we would have done if we didn't have the modular. So it has been a pretty smooth transition right now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. So do you want to start and then we'll pivot back? Just let us know when you see Rob in the waiting room.
So I'll start with a personnel report. I do have some items for action. I have 3 resignations for action. I have John Durr, middle school ELA. Kevin already tipped you to that. He resigned effective February 20th. Stephen Bryan, who at Montgomery Elementary School is resigning effective at the end of the year, grade 4-5 ELA. And Ethan Dezatel, grade 3 at Sheldon, effective June 30th. So I would ask the board to make a motion on those resignations.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
I have nothing under student, except for the pictures. See if any of the principals can identify. I'll actually, Sandy is ill and wasn't able to be here tonight, but I'll start with Montgomery at the bottom. The guy in the turquoise shirt in the middle is Mr. Ward. Mr. Ward was my middle school teacher. He and I started at Montgomery Elementary School on the same day. He started teaching middle school social studies, and I enrolled in 1st grade. So Jeff has been there for a minute. They had Dress Like a Teacher Day, and those were the students and staff in the building that chose to dress like Mr. Ward for their spirit day. So other principals can jump in.
Sheldon is the bottom left. I'm having vision issues tonight, so if somebody from my building knows what's going on, that'd be great, because I can't see it.
Cold Hollow came to visit
Thank you.
our 7th and 8th graders, and they had activities in the library and different stations for each of the programs. And so our middle schoolers got to travel around and meet with some former Sheldon students from each of those disciplines. And I did a little activity related to each of them.
Thank you, because I couldn't see what was going on.
All right, Kevin, you got up close.
Yeah, I couldn't see it either.
Good.
I'm getting old, this is awful. I'm up in the upper right, that's a first grade classroom, and they're just excited about the Olympics. So, we got some Olympic medalists.
Is that your school-wide?
What's that?
Did you do a school-wide?
No,
Or they're just excited about watching?
no, but thank you for setting me up. No, we just stuck to just one classroom, that was it. And everybody else just poo-pooed it. But no, we had a great time doing it, and we didn't do a school-wide one, but everyone was really interested in it. It was pretty cool to watch.
Here's this little setup for you. Do you know what that is?
Yeah,
I do, thank
Courtney
you, Courtney.
helped her.
Okay.
But I do notice, because I took quite a few of these pictures. Berkshire did a winterlude right before break, and the theme around it was Winter Olympics, so those are students curling for points.
That's cool.
Fun.
All right. Thankfully, cute pictures are the only things that we have under students this month.
And the hiring action plan?
No.
Nothing actionable. That is,
Oh, okay.
that was informational because
Okay.
it was support staff.
Okay.
I zoomed through part of that. There are some open positions. Bakersfield, Kevin is looking for middle school ELA. Is that firm that it's gonna be ELA?
It's middle school ELA.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. If anybody in Sheldon would like to apply for a middle school ELA position,
We don't poach.
we are poachers.
A half-time health teacher has been open for a while in Berkshire, Montgomery, elementary classroom teacher, Sheldon still looking for middle school interventionist, technology support specialist, and grade 3 teacher. I will just admit that sometimes I'm not up to date on these because these are due way before we come to this meeting, so sometimes I look around at the principals like, where are we on that?
Yeah.
So I'll jump into the next part of the report. Each year I bring you information about students who are exercising the elementary school choice part of our policy. So when we merged under Act 46, we created a policy in both districts that allowed for choice just within that district, and then we wrote procedures to go with that. So we've been tracking this data for several years, and it is a little small for me to read as well, but I will give Courtney credit. She did a great job putting this together. So it gives you your 4 schools, and the first visual on the left is really about students joining a school, and you can see that enrollment, blue is most recent, 25-26 school year. Orange is 5 years ago, 21-22 school year. So those are the number of students who went to those schools. And then on the right-hand side is a graph that reflects the number of students that left a particular school. And again, it's from 21-22 to 25-26. Any questions on that? So I shared that with you because we are about to open up our elementary school choice application process. So those applications are due May 1st.
And we usually send them out at the end of this month.
Right. So this is your report about what your patterns are looking like coming in and going out, and then we'll see what this next year brings. And just as a reminder, we don't provide transportation when people exercise choice. And we do have to, it's based on whether or not there's space in the receiving school. So there have been times where we've had to turn people away from this policy. I do see that we have Rob Montgomery who has joined us. Thank you for being with us, Rob.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
So we'll pivot back to you. So we talked a little bit about our modular classroom, but we really, as you know, we asked you to be here tonight to talk with us about where we are in Berkshire with the PCB issues. So I don't know if Morgan or Vern want to say more to cue this conversation up.
We've been working with Rob now for going on 3 years. Rob carries a pretty heavy load with the state of Vermont right now with all the schools that have PCB problems, and I think he's kind of feeling our frustrations as far as how we can turn this around a little quicker. So I just asked Rob to come on to maybe explain a little bit clearer of how the state's working with this, and if and when or how we can speed this up.
Can you, before you get into that level of detail, I just want to give context because there are some relatively new board members. Berkshire tested positive in 2 classrooms upstairs.
Correct.
And 1 hallway from nearest the kitchen. And just as a reminder to people, the PCB action levels in Vermont are higher than the federal action levels for PCB testing. And
Lower.
I'm sorry, lower,
Yes.
lower. So we tested positive with Vermont's lower standards, but in all the areas where we have positive PCBs, we would have tested below the federal EPA action levels. So just some context. But nevertheless, Vermont's levels are what they are, and now that we have positive tests, we have to come up with a remediation plan. So this is where I'm turning it over to you, Rob.
All right, thanks. You're right. The levels are what they are. Whether we're talking about federal, state, or local, the most stringent rule applies. And in this case, the most stringent rule is the state. And the state is asking that if we're exceeding the action level in school air, that we find the source. And what we're finding, in Berkshire and many other schools, that the source is a building material. As it relates to Berkshire, the site investigation to identify sources has been conducted. Those sources include window caulking, so steel metal frame to concrete masonry unit. They include some chalkboard caulking in each of the 2 classrooms in question, and they also include paint. The next step that the state is requiring is the preparation of an evaluation of corrective action alternatives. What an evaluation of corrective action alternatives is an exercise where you're evaluating the cost and efficacy of a controlled demolition versus maybe a manual product removal plus some encapsulation of impacted substrate, mechanical bulk product removal with encapsulation of substrate, and then lastly, do nothing. In this case, the EPA deems a PCB bulk product as a product that is not intended for use and not authorized, meaning it's got to go. Whether it goes today or it goes tomorrow or 10 years down the line, irregardless, it has to go. And at this point, whomever owns the product when it is discovered is the responsible party. So at this point, we're in a bit of a state of limbo. Essentially, I've reevaluated some time ago the cut line that was presented by the consulting firm that did the initial indoor air sampling. And that cut line falls, I don't have the diagram in front of me, but it falls right now, in the hallway that separates those 2 impacted classrooms from the rest of that second story. And each time I get there, I've looked long and hard to find a control joint that tells me that that portion of the building was constructed at a different time than the other portion of that second floor. And I now understand that the entire second floor is one construction. So the original classification that was done by others is inaccurate. So in preparing an evaluation of corrective action alternatives, I would like to present that to you all for discussion. My fear is that I prepare an evaluation of corrective action alternatives for you, and we perform that evaluation in those two spaces. But after all of that work, we come back and sample the air, because we're going to have to sample the air to prove the effectiveness of any corrective action that takes place. That sampling done after the fact does not prove to solve the problem of PCBs in school air. So, given the fact that the windows are uniform, less one room on the second floor, and the paint is homogeneous, meaning it all came out of the same 5-gallon bucket up there. I would ask that it be considered that, for disclosure, that the second floor is one construction to avoid the cost associated with a corrective action that's not effective.
So I think, Rob, before we turn that over to questions or before you go on to the other stuff, I'm gonna try to put what you said in words that I understand, which is the initial contractor had to go in and sort of come up with groupings of rooms. These rooms are all the same, and so we're gonna test one of these rooms, and we're gonna assume that the test in that room is valid for all those rooms. So we had the 2 classrooms in Berkshire.
Yep.
They were seen as a unit. We air tested one. That one came back hot. We said, okay, these 2 rooms have a situation that we need to deal with. For some reason, there were other rooms that we feel are similar to those 2 that were not
That
tested.
were not tested yet, right?
I'll just add that the confusing part when they selected these rooms is one part appears much newer
Yeah.
because we did a construction project in Berkshire, so it essentially took the envelope of what was the gym, put a floor there to divide that space, and then created new classroom spaces there. But what they failed to see was all of the exterior walls and the remaining space was all the same construction as those 2 classrooms.
Basically, the way I understood it, Rob, and kind of what Morgan was saying is, they selected a select side of the, and then we didn't proceed any farther than that, right? So there's another set of classrooms there that you're saying, you think, well, we know, that was all built at the same time.
Yeah.
So, the fact of the matter.
I've got the diagram queued up. If somebody can give me permission to share, I'm glad to share it for you.
Sure.
So are you saying that the entire envelope of the second story is contaminated with PCBs?
At this point, we don't know.
We don't know.
But it's
It's-
likely,
It's a
it's
possibility.
suggesting,
Rob, you
it's
should-
suggestive of that.
Right.
Yes.
And the giant remodel with the bond that we're still paying off, that was the recent construction, what portion of the building is that if because it's obviously not the second story, it's the
Well-
gym and this floor that,
So the whole entryway, so if you think about the ramp down in that new gym, that was all new construction. Nothing else was new construction, that was all remodel. So the envelope of what he's showing you there, like that's the footprint of what we're talking about, that's the upstairs, but that part in green, like to the left where it says 202, 203, 204, that previously was just open downstairs to a gym space. So the floor and those walls are all new. Everything else was there.
So, so what we have is, it was initially characterized as this being 68 construction and this being 80 construction. And what it sounds to me is that this was an 80 renovation, but this entire footprint was a 68 construction.
Yeah.
So based on what we've found so far, you know, the chalkboards are the chalkboards. That's pretty benign. That's super easy. But the larger contributor here is the paint in the windows. So, you know, that paint, it is quite likely that the paint that is on these exterior CMU walls in 213 and 212 is the same paint that's on 207 and 204, as are the windows in 204 and 207, the same as what's in 212. Does that make sense?
In the exterior wall of 202 and 203.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're only looking at window caulking and paint, correct?
Correct.
Chalkboard and caulk.
Chalkboard caulk, which he says nothing.
But I thought there was concern that it had infiltrated into
Into
the
the block.
concrete block.
Rob, can you
which is
talk a
the
little bit about
structure
that?
of the building.
Yeah,
essentially.
so part of the ECA process, it initially starts with identifying your goal. And your goal could be to reduce the concentrations of PCBs in indoor air. Your goal could be to remove the bulk product. Your goal could be to remove regulatory liability. If you are to remove just the bulk product, say we're gonna chemically strip the paint, we're gonna remove and replace the window, that path leads us down a path where we are attempting to reduce the concentrations of PCBs in air. It does not remove regulatory liability because that paint has penetrated a porous substrate. The CMU acts like a sponge. The paint is the water. The paint is infiltrating into that CMU to some depth or another. It could be 1/8 of an inch. It could be 1/2 an inch. It could be an inch. That's unknown, but we know that it's in there. And I'm just recalling other schools. In other schools, I'm seeing it somewhere between 1/2 inch and an inch. Now, what happens when you take the face of a hollow concrete block off? In your case, that block is structural, right? So you're compromising the structural integrity of the second floor and risking, you know, a catastrophic failure of the building system, essentially. I don't know that it would be possible to keep the second floor as it is right now if your goal is to keep the second floor and remove regulatory liability. You can encapsulate using epoxy coating. That is a mitigating effort which requires long-term maintenance, long-term monitoring. By long-term, that's defined as in perpetuity. That means forever, as long as the building is standing. And the monitoring would include periodic air sampling. It would include periodic wipe sampling to verify the integrity of the epoxy. Is there any bleed through, things like that? Periodic repair. Any holes or damage to the epoxy would need to be repaired at at least a quarterly frequency. Sampling is traditionally done on a semi-annual feature or frequency per the EPA. The DEC may be a little more or less stringent, but at the end of the day, the paint is going to penetrate that CMU without removing at least the face of the block. It's incredibly difficult to move the regulatory liability, and removing the face of the block when the block is structural has larger implications as it relates to the building envelope.
And Rob, by regulatory responsibility, you mean the responsibility that the board is held responsible, the school district essentially is responsible. You're not talking about regulatory responsibility on the part of Monsanto, the manufacturer of PCBs.
If I said responsibility, I misspoke. I meant liability.
Okay. I might have misheard you. So that regulatory liability rests on the shoulders of the district. We're not talking about on the shoulders of Monsanto.
What I will add here, Mary, is just a reminder for those new to the board, not a reminder, this is probably new information. We have, we're party in a lawsuit against Monsanto's for PCBs and with many other districts across the state. Technically, I think we're party in 2 suits because the state of Vermont is also suing. So that has yet to be finalized, but.
But he's speaking about the liability for the
It's
is the district's liability. And we essentially have an entire building envelope that is compromised, and mitigation efforts seem like inadequate at best. And anything more structural,
Yeah.
I mean, these are structural supporting walls. It's the
Right.
entire envelope of the building.
If you can look at this, the PCBs I kind of put on the same thing as what we've been dealing with asbestos. You know, encapsulation, but encapsulation, at some point, somebody's gonna have to take care of it, which we're doing now. We don't encapsulate anymore, let's get rid of it. My issues with this whole thing is, by doing, essentially, you're stripping the paint, putting on an epoxy paint, somebody comes in after I leave, doesn't know about it, starts drilling holes in it. I mean, this is gonna be a process that it's gonna have to be very stringent. Something chips, so I mean, like Rob says, we're really against kind of a tough decision here.
So like theoretically, you could do all these mitigation strategies as
But-
well as indoor air monitoring and filtration for kind of indoor air quality and stuff, but that's really just a Band-Aid
Right, the problem's
on
always
a
gonna be.
more systemic, pretty much catastrophic contamination issue. And when did we do the gym project? To the tune of how many? $20?
4.5.
2016?
14.
And at that point, with that construction project, there was no testing or any kind of concerns because this hadn't been raised
It
by
all
the
raised with
state.
Burlington was the first, and then it just kind of imploded. The real, like Lynn was kind of alluding to, the real kicker on this whole thing is, the state of Vermont is so below what the national average is, okay? There's only one state that tests for PCBs, and it's us. And we're below the national average.
Well, we're the only state that tests for PCB in air as an
Right.
indicator of an issue.
Yeah.
Other states, Connecticut requires bulk product be tested prior to a renovation, and they regulate to 1 part per million, which is
Yeah.
incredibly stringent too.
Right. But I think what Mary was alluding to is, why didn't this come up on that addition? Well, we didn't know anything about PCBs at that point.
No, the EPA regulations inform disposal.
Yeah.
So there's and part of my job is to find the gray area, right? I can inform disposal without sampling for total PCBs. I can do a sample that lets the landfill know how much PCBs is going to leach out of a given building material, and it doesn't carry the same regulatory ramifications that total PCBs carries. Total PCBs is what the DEC is requiring us to collect.
So Rob, can I just clarify, where you are right now is you are working to help us create a plan to put before the DEC for approval. And what I think I heard you say is, when they did the original sampling, they mislabeled the second floor. And so what you're saying is that if we went ahead and wrote a mitigation or remediation plan for rooms, those 2 gray classrooms, the worry would be that we'd still be positive because it might be in the remaining part of the building. So you're saying potentially more testing as part of the first phase in the mitigation or remediation plan?
Well, I don't know that there would be a requirement to do more testing. But I'll point you at this red dot. Can you see my cursor? There was a sample collected at this location, and at that location, the result was just below the school action level.
Rob, see your cursor.
I'm
Just
sorry.
describe where you are.
Can't see the cursor, so just describe it.
Well, at the red dot by the stairs that move horizontally across the page.
13 or 208?
1980.
Horizontally, more,
Right
yep.
there, yep.
Yeah, got it.
So that sample didn't exceed the SAL, but it approached the SAL. And, you know, it was a head scratcher. How come, right? There's no windows in here. You know, it's a different color paint than in 212 and 213. Well, you know, you guys work in education. These classrooms get painted every 3 years or every time a teacher moves in and wants a different color, right? The paint that you see is not the paint that contains PCBs. It's the paint under the paint under the paint under the paint. That's the one that has the PCBs. So that sample in particular causes concern and a sense of caution for me. That caution being, you know, if I move forward and help you work through a corrective action for 212 and 213, we put this all back together, and then I go back to 212 and 213 and I collect samples inside those two respective work areas and then one outside the work area. I would feel like I'm not informing you or consulting for your behalf well if I didn't say I have fears that what's going on in the other portions of the second floor may have an impact on any corrective action we do. So the next step is an evaluation of corrective action. But with that said, I'm working for you. We're entered into an agreement where you know I'm not going to disclose any information until you tell me to. So we know that second floor building shell is ubiquitous, homogeneous. It's all the same construction. I'm sharing with you a concern that I have related to the most underlying paint and the windows throughout that facility and the potential for their presence to negatively impact a limited renovation, limited that is to just 212 and 213.
So Rob, at some point we are gonna send a letter to the DEC. It has to have at least 3 different potential actions. Is that correct? I think we need to give them 3 options.
Yeah, an ECA requires a minimum of 3 options. Yep.
And so one of those options we will present as this is the one that the board recommends.
Yeah, once it's prepared, I actually just did this tonight. You probably know this, but the first Wednesday of the month is when every school board meets. And I presented there and we came to an alignment on what is your goal and what is the preferred alternative. We would have that same meeting together following, you know, the compilation and receipt of some contractor pricing for the corrective action, et cetera, et cetera.
And so the DEC is the agency that is sort of on the hook to decide which of those 3 plans or 3 or more plans is allowed to move forward. And they're not required to go with what the board recommends.
The ECA doesn't bind you to doing anything, and it doesn't require their approval for you to do anything. What it is it's presenting them a well-informed, an appropriately evaluated list of alternatives, and then a well-crafted, I don't want to call it an argument, a well-crafted narrative that lets them know this is the best option for this given problem. there's good ways to do it and there's bad ways to do it. You can be completely argumentative or you can be communicative and really open-minded. My approach is communicative, where I like to present this to them in a draft form, which allows a dialogue, and we can play some professional ping pong and come up with something that works. Community engagement is a big piece of the ECA. Cost is important, right? But community engagement is even more important. The DEC needs, just like you guys do, we all need community goodwill to feel good about the decisions that we're making and how the money's being spent. So engaging them early in the process of an ECA is incredibly important. Something that, I take a lot of pride in doing, and frankly, I don't do an ECA without doing that.
And there are no state or federal monies available to help with this process. This is all out of pocket. Is that correct?
I don't know. I guess every year at this time, the answer is I don't know. I wish I could do better than that. What I can say is that the DEC is presently positioning themselves to be lobbyists as the legislative session is about to take place. I know that, Lynn, I know you gave some testimony and several of my other clients have as well. I've been deposed at exhaustingly great lengths, and everybody's working towards the same goal, and that goal really is to realize where can the money come from. One potential avenue is the DEC lobbying the regulators to come up with a new allocation for the next fiscal year.
So Rob, I just want to make sure that my understanding of the process is correct. So we will work with you on an ECA. At some point that gets sent to the DEC and it will say, here is option A and the reasons why we think option A is the best option. And here's the cost and community involvement. We also considered option B and option C. Who has the authority to move forward at that point? Does the DEC then say, yeah, go ahead with option A, or we don't like option A, go ahead with option B? Does the DEC just say, thanks for the report, let me know what you do?
The DEC will align. They may say, I know you picked option 3, but we like option 2 better. But at the end of the day, you guys have power to say, no, reducing the concentration of PCBs in school air is not good enough for us. We want to remove the regulatory liability, for example. And you can move forward with the development of a corrective action plan with that goal in mind.
This seems also like a very large project. Would it interfere with the students being able to attend the school if you're looking at the entire second story of that building under construction? It doesn't seem like a summer job.
I would say it's a medium project, and not impossible to do in a summer. The piece that's more difficult for me to predict would be the time to put back. Typically, a new facility right now, another school that I'm working with is, they're aligning for demolition and a rebuild. I know I can do the demolition in 45 days. The rebuild, so new school, so we're talking like 18 months. Now, a project like this, if demolition was the scenario and all the stars aligned and said, yep, this is going to work, that demolition could be done in 30 days. No doubt. The putback time, I'm not 100% sure. It may, it could be 3 months. It could delay or be an impediment to school and the learning environment. Absolutely.
And that's a piece that the DEC in theory would consider with the EC, yeah,
Well, that disruption to the learning environment would be factored into the evaluation criteria. That piece in and of itself would lend more towards remediating the bulk product and mitigating epoxying the walls, because that can be done much quicker than building a new second story, for example.
And is there a version of this where we have kind of a short and medium and longer term kind of arc of this, meaning that we also have Act 73 kind of looming with big questions about redistricting, consolidation, etc. And so is there a version where in the short term we do some of those mitigation efforts and we make sure that the indoor air that students and staff and teachers are breathing every day is safe and below the limits where it needs to be while we wait to see some of these bigger county-wide and statewide decisions that are going to be made for us around consolidation and such before we invest. I mean, if we're talking about a full rebuild, we're talking tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. And so it would be really premature to make that kind of decision without knowing how things are going to shake out with the maps and the plan from the state.
Yeah.
What is the requirement of the legislation for the timeline for remediation?
Did you hear that one, Rob?
You know, it's how best to answer that one. Yeah, at this point, you guys got a letter from the site manager requesting an evaluation of corrective action. Work plan be presented. There hasn't been any timeline for completion of an evaluation of corrective action. Typically, when we get to the point of corrective action planning, that document, I put a schedule in it. For example, with Burlington High School, when I wrote that corrective action plan, by that point, the architect, the clerk of the works, the construction manager, the general contractor, everybody was in the same room, and we made a construction calendar, and that construction calendar moved forward with the corrective action plan for penultimate DEC approval. So formalizing a schedule for, the act of doing something corrective is to be determined at this point. What I will say is that the EPA is very much, they operate very much the same way. I have yet to see them issue a letter that says, you got to do something about this in 6 months. But they are requiring that you do something. What's often driving the bus is the money, right? We all know that a gallon of milk in 10 years is going to be even more expensive than a gallon of milk today, right? So that's the cost ends up being the ultimate driver for the responsible party, the owner of one of these contaminated properties.
Yeah, but on the other hand, the owner right now is right here, and in 5 years, the owner could be a lot more people, right?
At the end of the day, I was on a meeting, was it last week, Rob? 2 weeks ago with the state, and there's absolutely no money. And I don't know how they're deciding, but I mean, we took the initiative to do it, but then there's nothing to help us out. And
Did I hear something in the legislation rumblings about maybe even reevaluating the levels that they originally established?
I have not heard a reevaluation of the levels, but what Rob was referring to is that there is a bill out there because there are still schools that haven't been tested, and they want to, right now they're on pause, and they want to end it. So no more schools end up in the situation we're in. And to your point about timeline, I think the timeline is impacted by the backlog of, now that they've done this, there are a lot of schools in the same situation that we're in. And there's a backlog for people like Rob and others doing this work. It's an overwhelming amount of people that are trying to address this. So as frustrating as it is for the Berkshire community to be without those two spaces, this isn't something that's going to move through super quickly. Like to get to even where we are today, it was hoop after hoop after hoop after hoop. Do this thing, then wait, then do this other thing, then wait. And there's more of that ahead of us, for sure.
So what are the next steps? Then you all are working with Rob to come up with this document? Because
I think that's the long term. What we'll probably do, and Rob, you can correct me if I'm off base here, is that we'll come up with a few different possible scenarios with some level of abatement. And at some point, the board's gonna have to say, yeah, it's more important to clean the air and get kids back in the classroom, or it's more important to get everything we know about and everything we suspect out of the building, or something in between. And then that will be reflected in the report that Rob sends on our behalf to the DEC.
and you'll have actual numbers of costs of all those options that would help inform the decision.
We'll have estimates, but
And then what's the timeline for the map that's come to this July, correct, from the state?
In Act 73, it says July 1,
Okay.
2026.
Okay, so we'll just want to keep that in our
You're feeling the same way I
purview.
am.
Yeah,
What do we do?
right, okay.
so,
Okay.
Rob, do you have any similar concerns about the first floor original building 1980 renovation?
1968.
1968,
But the space that was renovated in 80?
Right now, I would say no. I don't have the data that they collected in that space, but at this point, you don't have evidence of a release, an exceedance of a SAL. Therefore, you don't have anything to chase. It falls outside of the purview of the DEC's regulatory reign. The regulatory reign at this point is limited to 212 and 213. If down the road you were to decide, hey, we're going to demo this first floor, Rob, what should we do? There is a different type of analysis that we can perform to inform the waste stream, which is the building in a dumpster, inform the waste stream as it relates to PCBs, therefore informing the landfill of what they're receiving. That analysis does not carry the same EPA requirements. The EPA requirement that you face right now is that you have regulated bulk products in your facility. Regulated bulk products are not authorized for use, and they've got to go. Whether they go today or they go tomorrow, they've got to go. And that's the EPA piece, and a slight disconnect from the DC and the EPA. But the DC now, to Lynn's point, they're pausing some of this because the dots are starting to connect. Us going and collecting these samples, now we've got a bunch of schools that have products that are not authorized for use. And, we all saw what happened at Burlington, right? That school had PCBs that had migrated so far from bulk product that it had completely compromised structural CMU, and the penultimate corrective action was demolition because they were never going to get rid of it without it.
So to just kind of wrap us up on this part, it sounds like there's going to be some work done to come up with what those specific options are. And then we'll come back to the board to have a conversation about which seems like the most logical option to move forward in. I know you are here to talk about Berkshire, Rob, but I would be remiss if we didn't also name that we have another school that has tested positive for PCBs in this district, and that's Sheldon. It is the envelope of the gym space in Sheldon. None of those are classroom spaces where people spend a ton of time. It's mostly locker room, kitchen, that boiler area. But we're not as far down the road in Sheldon. Everything is just kind of slowed way down in terms of what the next steps are. So we didn't have to put any kind of restriction or limit on use of space there. But you have the sense statewide of where we are in terms of moving pieces forward. Sheldon seems really low on everyone's priority list. Do you have any sense about there?
So I'll give you a quick bit on Sheldon, and then I just got to double back on Berkshire on one thing. On Sheldon, at this point, you're right. You have an exceedance of the school action level at Sheldon. The areas that you have that exceedance in are not classified as primary classrooms. So when you exceed in a primary classroom, you move up the priority chart, if you will, and you take up more volume on the DC's radar. Right now, you're not on that radar, and because at this point the regulation is not really bearing a lot of teeth. I would not suggest sampling building materials until you start to get some of those teeth, because again, there's a huge difference between how building materials are regulated and indoor air is regulated. If you sample building materials at Sheldon right now and you find that you have a total PCB concentration greater than 50 parts per million, that product is not authorized for use and it's got to go. So Sheldon, I guess I would be aware. There are some other, mitigating techniques out there. There's other schools where there has been air purifying units deployed, air-to-air filters that have proven successful in controlling and reducing the concentrations of PCBs in air. But, at this point, you're right. Sheldon is not a priority. And I would say you should consider, waiting until they give you some direction to sample building materials before you do.
And so Rob, just to pivot back then to the Berkshire situation, on a scale of like 0 to a Burlington High School kind of situation, where does Berkshire land? I mean, I know obviously square footage, it's a much smaller building, but I'm talking about as far as like this kind of infiltration of the envelope that is largely structural. There seems to be some corollary there with what ended up being necessary at Burlington High School. But maybe I'm misunderstanding the severity of it.
Well, the nature of the problem is very much the same. I don't know the degree and extent of how deeply the paint has infiltrated at Berkshire. I advocated to my death to not sample the paint or not analyze the paint at Berkshire because I know what it did to Burlington. We were forced to analyze the paint by the DEC, and now here we are with this issue. I did my best to fight that fight, and we lost. But at this point, irregardless of the path that's taken, demolition or remediation mitigation, there is a need to assess the depth in which the paint has migrated into the block. What I can say with certainty is that yes, it will have migrated into the block. How deeply, I don't know, but I know that a hollow block is 1.25 inches thick. how much block can you take off from the face of the block before a structural engineer says that block is not structurally sound anymore? Not very much. It's going to be difficult to get a structural engineer to put a stamp on something that carries that level of liability. The piece I'd like to circle back on, I get the sense that, everybody is getting the ECA process, evaluate 3 criterion, and we work through it, and it's not necessarily binding. It kind of paints a picture and gives us sort of a 3-lane crossroad to sort of walk down. But I want to circle back on my fear. My fear professionally is that we do a corrective action in 212 and 213, and we put it all back together, and we prove that it's ineffective because that same material is in the rest of that second story, and then we end up ripping the Band-Aid off again, mobilizing a contractor again, and doing all this work again. That is my fear, and that fear is supported by the concentrations of PCBs in air in that custodial or mechanical closet that's located at the top of the horizontal staircase on the second floor, which is depicted by the original consultant who did the air sampling as post 1980 construction.
And so then is there like a point, Rob, at which mitigation efforts, like when they're contained to a smaller area where they can be monitored, maintained over year after year after year, like you said, it's kind of forever. Is there a threshold at which it's so expansive, it's so, it's the entire envelope of most of the building? Are you kind of suggesting then that the mitigation likely falls short because it's being employed at such a broad scope and scale? Or am I misunderstanding that?
I'm speaking specifically to the second floor, first off, but I had blinders on to that lens in particular. Are you suggesting that original construction extends beyond the second floor?
No, I'm just saying, when you look at those mitigation strategies, the epoxy, the filtration, all those things that you spoke of a little bit ago that said then require really kind of constant, ongoing monitoring, like Vern's suggesting, like chips in paint that then have to be fixed. It's easier when it's smaller, in a smaller contained 2 classrooms versus trying to mitigate an entire envelope where it seems like it's harder to maintain the safety of of such extensive mitigation.
Safety of who? The contractor or the?
No, the safety of the inhabitants or the people who are using the structure, and us trying to stay below thresholds that are now required for safety of use of space when you're mitigating an entire building, essentially.
So the second floor, any remedial effort or mitigation that would be prescribed on the second floor would not be done with anybody in the building. So that provides, a level of safety there in terms of unoccupancy beyond those that are, trained and certified to be there to do the work. The other element of safety is to prove the efficacy of the corrective action, and that would be initial air sampling that deems it effective, and that's typically done after a series of air changes. At North Country we did 6 air changes an hour for 14 days, and we got the levels down, and boom, they were back in school. That's that's pretty standard. The monitoring piece in perpetuity, you know, in perpetuity, you know, when I draw this stuff up, I consider in perpetuity to be 30 years. And when I put together the costs for said monitoring, I'll price it out for year one and I'll amortize a 4% inflation rate for every year for 30 years. So over the course of 30 years, I mean, I'll share this with you. Hopefully. There we go. You know, so here, this is another facility that is, you know, 600% larger than the second story at Berkshire, but you know, 30 years of monitoring, you know, you're looking at $1 million over the course of 30 years in either case. And, you know, with gross removal, via manual versus mechanical methods, you know, total project value, you know, the more manual it gets, the more money is involved. Mechanical gets a little cheaper, but, you know, my point is monitoring is expensive. As is the risk around mitigating right now, only to have to remediate later, because whatever you mitigate now is going to need to be remediated later. You know, that liability never goes away with in perpetuity.
Right. Okay, thank you so much, Rob. That's a lot to digest. We appreciate your time, and I'm gonna, since we have kind of have to move on with the meeting, Morgan, Vern, you'll continue to
Yes.
dialogue with Rob and then bring to the board kind of the next steps, eh?
And Rob, you don't need anything from the board tonight.
I don't need anything from the board tonight, but what I do need is something to come through my inbox that says, please proceed with 212 and 213, or let's talk to the VC about the second floor.
Yeah, Vern and I will get that
Yep.
to you.
Okay. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Is that
Take
something,
care.
I think that's what he was hoping to get from the board tonight, was just the confirmation that with the suspicion, we want to be forthright with the DEC about the second floor.
Absolutely.
Is there anybody that is opposed to that?
No.
So I think you've got the answer to move forward with that. I just don't think that they understood in the first round.
And so, just one other question, he's gone now. The mitigation is really just the Band-Aid.
Yes.
Even if you mitigate, you still ultimately have to remediate.
You're encapsulated.
And then at the same time, you have to be constantly monitoring the mitigation.
Right.
While you're then working on the remediation, and then that begs the question of, is it a demolition?
Right.
Okay.
And in Enosburg, we had to do monitoring on one room, and it was about $20,000 a year. We had to do it quarterly, so call it $5,000 each test, which is $1 million over 30 years.
Gotcha.
And when we
That was one
abated,
run.
when we abated the asbestos out of there, when we did the new floors,
Yeah.
amazingly enough, we tested negative after we abated it, so.
And there's
again,
no asbestos in the 1960 lower section build of that building either, right? We know that for
Berkshire.
sure.
In
Once they
Berkshire.
start tearing
It's all
down the top
been- Yeah.
half,
No,
we know that we're not
Yeah.
gonna get into problems in the lower half.
Yeah.
We already did that
And
part.
I just want to share, I don't know the rhyme or reason how, when Atlas came in, they did their studies, and why they didn't take it to that next level, but they had a plan to come in and test certain areas, and I do think that the misconception of what was up there was probably our biggest,
It looks newer.
it did. So basically, we asked Rob to come in just because, you guys listen to me, and I'm not Rob is the voice of this stuff, and he knows it. And it's very, very frustrating for Morgan, Lynn, and I, that we can't make this move forward any faster, because anybody that knows me, when I get a task, I like to power through it, and there's nothing I can do for this. The state has just got us tied up, so.
And I do just want to kind of wrap up with just a little reminder that even though we're talking in kind of these like dire terms of, you know, demolition and you know, maybe some of the verbiage is a little kind of weighty, that we are still well below the thresholds. This is really was, you know, triggered by Vermont deciding to go to a much more stringent level than the national EPA levels are, and that we are all very confident that if in the kids and the staff and the students that are in the building right now are not in an unhealthy or unsafe environment.
I shared the levels with Lynn when she went and spoke, and after looking at everything, we're well below everything.
Right.
It's just they
And
chose.
that's not to suggest that we're still not gonna do right
Right.
by the law and what the requirements are. I just don't want people to, like, if there was a dire emergency around health and safety and wellness for the not inhabitants, but for the people that frequent that building, we would be making, you know, a very different decision in the moment that was responsive for prioritizing health and safety. So just want people to kind of fully understand that.
And it came from the newest renovation, or it's been there for years?
Been there since it was built. So, I guess I also just want to say, you know, he said words that are scary, like, demolition, things like that. Like, we don't ultimately know where this will land in the end, so I just don't want us to, you know, make everybody in the community who's not a part of this conversation to make assumptions about what was just discussed tonight. So we have a lot of track to lay before we get to a place where we have a plan for remediation and or mitigation, and we don't know what level that will be. So I just hope we walk out of this conversation not in an alarmist way. Like, it is what it is, and we'll figure it out, and we'll deal with whatever we have to deal with.
Maybe we'll change the level when we find out the state doesn't want to fund any of it.
Doesn't seem to be interested in that.
So we have a little bit of a time pressure, so I know we needed to wrap up your report.
I have a lot in my report, and I'm wondering if we could just pause here in my report,
Yeah.
because we also have the attorney coming on
Right.
for executive session.
Yeah, and do you still want to do the quick, like,
Could we do,
Like-
I would love to spring principles, but
like,
if we could
we could do like speed dating,
if we
2
could
minutes.
2 minutes, I can do it in less than 2.
You said that earlier.
Okay, all right, Kevin, Terry Sue, and then Aaron.
Yeah, I would love to follow that, because that won't be hard. That was,
Speed dating.
yeah. I quickly, I mentioned it earlier, the flexibility of my staff has been fantastic with the loss of a teacher who has chosen to leave. But I'm just gonna say their names out loud. So Caitlin Bain, Grace Barron, Lorelei Westbrook, Kendra Pillsbury, and Derek Lewis have all stepped up and tackled this situation with professionalism, and it was awesome. They're awesome. So, and I didn't have to say anything. They just did it.
Just one question, we're really being careful with our special educator still getting her time with students that needs to be documented and all that kind of stuff.
Yep, we got it all. Thank you, Arlene. Yeah, everything has been flipped and flopped, and we made sure that it worked. Yep.
Our quick highlight, the Friday right before break, they had our annual staff versus student basketball game, and staff were creamed. So this one, Brady was correct if he said the students won.
I could just add to, we already saw a picture of it, but right before break, we did a second annual winterlude, just kind of like trying to shoo winter out. Theme was Olympics. It was really great to see staff and students, they did mixed age groups. And those groups will continue throughout the rest of the year as they work on some SEL work together, but they spent a lot of time outside, a lot of time playing with one another, lots of teamwork, and it was interesting to see who was competitive. So,
I just want to thank, the Sheldon teachers, although you came for a different reason, I'm so glad you came to a board meeting. It's just nice to have you involved, and it just shows how much you care for your school and your community and for Franklin Northeast. So thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna make a motion then to enter executive session.
Before you do that, can I just ask where the next steps are for all of us? Like, we said what we felt, and I feel like you guys did hear us. But where will we go from here?
Well, that is the purpose of one of our executive sessions this evening. We're gonna be discussing this Sheldon
Okay.
situation, and the board will make a decision, and then Lynn will make sure to communicate about the decision.
Okay, all right.
So, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And, okay, so we are out of executive session, 9:53. I'm gonna make a motion for Lynn to act as per executive session regarding our personnel matter. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you so much. We are gonna, it's late, we're gonna punt the rest of the non-essential matters until April, which will be in Berkshire, right?
Yep.
And that will be our reorganization meeting. We'll be welcoming 2 new board members on at that April meeting, and so this is our last meeting with Samantha and Miranda. We've really enjoyed having you on the board with us. Thank you so much. Of course, we wish you all the best, and you're always welcome to come to our meeting.
Wednesday night.
Thank you so much. So anything else from the board tonight? All right, so I'll make a motion then to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone.